Welcome to Better Than Gossip, ageless advice for timeless women. I'm Kristen Coffield, today's host, and we are going to have so much fun. Today's show is all about how to select coffee and how to brew the perfect cup. So my guest today is Andrea Schmidt. She is the co-owner of Misha's Coffee. She is also the co-owner of Trident CrossFit. She is a coffee expert and a wellness expert, and she is going to show us how to select the perfect beans and brew a perfect cup of coffee. Did you know about that?
What? I didn't hear. You know, that thing I've been telling you about. It's been a game changer for me.
Welcome to Better Than Gossip. Today we are going to be tasting some coffee, and I'm here with my friends Andrea and Michael. Michael is our coffee taster today, and we're going to learn how to pick the right beans to brew the perfect cup of coffee. Andrea, what do we need to know?
Well, a lot of it starts with personal taste. So you would need to figure out, do you prefer the taste of a darker roast or of a lighter roast? Ways that you might, things that I think are indicators, or if you drink wine and you in red wine you prefer a Cabernet, you may prefer a dark roast in coffee. If you prefer a Pinot Noir, a little bit lighter red, you may prefer coffee on the lighter side. So that is the first step. Then you would actually want to make sure you're getting from a small local roaster, preferably. That way you know your coffee is going to be the freshest as possible because they will have roasted it very recently, likely in small batches. It's also more likely to be sourced properly and be more sustainable.
And we did talk about that in a previous episode. We talked about where coffee comes from, how it's grown, why it's important to buy from these small individual growers or co-ops who are really small 5-acre plots, right, of beans. So, okay, so Michael, what do you like to drink? Are you a Cabernet drinker or are you a Pinot Noir drinker?
I like wine that is big and bold. So I know with coffee, I like coffee that's got a nice dark roast taste to it.
Okay. Well, why don't we try it? This is a dark roast,
Yes,
right?
here we have that brewed.
Let's each try one of those.
Sure.
So what is this coffee that's in this cup?
This is actually our most popular coffee in our store. It's called the Route 66 blend. It is a secret blend, but I can say that it is comprised of all hand-picked, highest grade, highest altitude Arabica beans from small growers.
It's excellent.
It's got like a little chocolatey.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a dark roast, it's really smooth.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love this.
I'm really a fan of this. In fact, I didn't know I liked dark roasts until I started drinking dark roasts that I roasted.
And Andrea's been roasting, for those of you who might not have watched any of our previous shows with Andrea's been roasting coffee for over 30 years. And coffee roasting is kind of a male-dominated business, right?
Yes, absolutely. And there's also, I'm what they would call an artisanal or craft roaster, which means that I'm in control of the coffee throughout the entire process. Over time, it's very popular now for everything to be computerized. And although that you can, record what's called profiles through a computer, every batch is slightly different. The environmental factors matter. Like, is it humid out? The coffees themselves, they change. They all have different moisture content. So the ability to discern when the coffee's ready and make that moment's decision really matters in the quality of the coffee. A few seconds can be the difference between an excellent batch of roasted coffee and one that's not so great.
Okay, here's a big question. The grind. Like, how do people know what grind to get? And I know sometimes I've gone into the coffee shop and I've said, okay, I'm using like the screw top coffee pot, espresso pot that you put on the stove. And it's not an espresso roast. You need actually a little bigger roast. So what role does the grind play in this whole coffee process?
That is a great question, and it actually plays a very large role. Improper grind can really, it can actually ruin the process. So for instance, if you have a home espresso maker and you go to a coffee house and ask them to grind it for espresso and they grind it for a commercial maker, which has way more steam pressure, sometimes what will happen is you put the coffee in the espresso maker and literally nothing comes out.
Right.
You can't even make coffee because the grind is too fine. There's not enough pressure for the steam to penetrate the coffee. So the grind very much matters. It is variable depending on the process, and it has to do with getting the right kind of saturation around the coffee. For instance, a cold brew, you would have a coarser grind, so there's larger surface area because it's just sitting there in the water. Drip, it depends on the type of drip. If it's a cone, you would want it a little bit coarser than a basket.
So like this is a cone.
Exactly. And so that would be a drip grind, but maybe slightly different than one that has a flat because of the way the coffee is coming down in the bottom.
And on a coffee grinder, there's how many choices are there?
It depends on the grinder. Like the commercial ones, there's typically like 0 to 9 are the numbers. And so you have all the degrees in the, like the tick marks in between as well. So you can really adjust it. The other thing that's kind of confusing, I think, is you calibrate your own grinder. So a number 6 on my grinder might not be the same as the number 6 on a Starbucks grinder. It may be fairly close, but not exactly the same. So it's good to kind of, if you are getting it ground elsewhere, to try to get used to what they're doing. If you have a burr grinder at home, I would recommend a burr grinder, not just a single blade grinder. Then you can experiment with that. You can also calibrate it.
Excellent. Oh, that's so fun to know. So we need to select our beans. I personally am a Pinot Noir drinker. So I would probably like more of a medium roast. And that's such good advice because I think for a lot of us, we want to make a choice that's going to suit us, but we don't even know the language we should use when we go to the coffee shop to order our beans. So if I wanted a medium roast coffee and I've got an espresso machine, what would you recommend to me?
Well, honestly, for an espresso machine, I would say you go like the medium on the darker side of medium. So what some people might call like an espresso roast. So for here, I would choose this one.
Okay.
The reason being, it's twofold. The brewing method is a continuation of the cooking of the coffee. So espresso is very quick. So it's not cooking very much anymore, correct?
Right.
So you would want something that is cooked a little more. Second, what is one of the best parts of an espresso? The crema, the nice tan frothy stuff at the top. It is very difficult to get crema from a very light roast, particularly that's 100% Arabica. So you need to roast it just a little bit darker where the oil's developed, and then you'll get a nicer crema.
But I wouldn't do a French roast. What would you use a French roast
That would be
for?
a matter of preference. Some people like a dark roast on espresso. In Italy, Tuscany, I believe, they use a dark roast on their espresso. Most other regions have a roast like this. In Seattle, dark roast for espresso became very popular. But in the industry, people used to joke it's because they're getting a big cup of milk with an espresso, not like their lattes were like 20 ounces of milk and 1 shot of espresso. So they wanted something to really stand up to it. So that is just, I think, a matter of taste.
Michael, what do you drink? What's your...
Well, I mean, very seldom do I have an espresso just because it's long. It takes, for some reason, it's just, to grind the beans and then to do that at home, it's just a little longer. So I just usually traditionally drink drip coffee. In a restaurant, I may go for like a macchiato with just a touch of milk or something like that. But for the most part, I stick more towards the medium to dark.
Okay.
I didn't even know I was doing it the right way. Thank you.
Yeah, you are. That's fantastic.
So Andrea, can you tell us, okay, let's say now we're at the coffee shop and we want to get a coffee. Can you describe some of the different coffees? Because Michael just brought up something, a macchiato, and I drink a latte, which is a lot of milk. A latte, lot of milk. And so can you describe some of those different coffee drinks for people?
Sure. As far as those are espresso-based drinks, and for espresso-based drinks, nowadays there are quite a few, but you have an espresso, which would just be the espresso itself. A macchiato is typically espresso with a dollop of foam. But what's interesting is that is the definition of a macchiato. But if you get a macchiato at a Starbucks, it's typically like a 6 or 10 ounce drink. It's not a traditional macchiato. So sometimes the the language isn't consistent across the industry. So it's good to clarify if you don't want a lot of milk that, hey, I just want a little dollop. A latte, typically in Italy, when they were first made, was not in a large cup. They were small. So it didn't have a ton of milk. It would be, I believe, like 1/3 espresso, 2/3 milk. Traditionally, but nowadays they do typically have a lot more milk. A cappuccino would be espresso with 1/3 steamed milk, 2/3 and 1/3 foam sitting on top. The foam, essentially, that is a lot of air has gone into that milk and it sits on top. And the way the drink tastes differently is it's not intended to be stirred up. You basically, the espresso and steamed milk come through this foam. The espresso kind of bites you after you get this just soft milk foam. So that's these are the more traditional definitions.
I learned something interesting when I lived in Italy many years ago. They don't drink any coffee drinks with milk in them in the afternoon. They tend to drink any coffee drinks with milk are considered morning beverages. And then in the afternoon, they pretty much just drink an espresso. Or after dinner, an espresso.
An Americano is simply, if you want American coffee in Italy, they don't have pour-overs, or they used to not. I'm not sure now, haven't been there recently. But they would add hot water to espresso to dilute it to make it a cup of coffee, hence the name Americano.
So we're going to take a little bit of a coffee break, and then we'll be right back, and we're going to talk more about coffee.
So we roast artisanally still, which means that a lot of machines for places are much bigger. So I kind of compare like commercial bread in a commercial bakery to artisanal bread, like a small baker that's actually handling all of the loaves.
It was so interesting to see your roaster and your vent. And that's a big deal because Misha's Coffee is located in Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, and it is a very strict historic city. Like, they are so strict, the neighbors will come after you with pitchforks if they think you're going to be, making their whole neighborhood smell like coffee. I don't even smell any coffee from the back of Misha's or anything.
Roasting coffee generates a lot of smoke and byproduct. And typically, we'll just go out into the atmosphere. The solution for, decades has been something called an afterburner, which is an incinerator that gets up to like 1600 degrees and burns off a lot of that byproduct before it goes out the chimney. The issue with an afterburner is it uses a lot of gas. So we use natural gas to fire up the roaster to heat the drum. It's got an electric igniter, but the roaster uses gas. The afterburner uses about 10 times more gas than the actual roaster. So not great environmentally, cost-wise also. And then a third consideration is in a lot of old towns, the gas lines are very old and they're not very big. So there's really not enough gas pressure.
Got it.
It made roasting like that was kind of just challenging. So I found out about something called a vortex, and essentially it was invented by a bunch of roasters in California where they have very strict laws for pollution. So they were concerned because they weren't going to be able to roast coffee in some of these small roasters. So they invented something called a vortex, which essentially uses aerated water to absorb the smoke and odor before everything goes out the chimney.
And your vortex is quite unique. Not a lot of people have one of these.
Yes, it's very, I was the first person on the East Coast to get one. It was 3 years ago, and I'm not sure how many more, hopefully more people are getting them now. They've actually had a few people call me to say, hey, this works great. And yeah, it's been really good. And the company's great. They've already updated things, made some improvements. So
we love the vortex.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, so back to the coffee. So what we know now is that a great cup of coffee starts with a great bean that's an Arabica bean, but it really matters how it's been roasted and how what we choose, not only how it's roasted, but how it's ground for our coffee maker. And that can make a difference in the caffeine level of the coffee. So Please enlighten us so we don't overdo
Yeah.
it
Well,
as I drink more coffee.
In the roasting process, one thing that's interesting is roasting is not technically super complicated, but just like anything, I don't believe it's easy to be good at anything. So it takes quite a bit of focused practice to actually get good at it because all the coffees are different. So if you are a craft roaster where you are determining every batch, hey, how does this coffee develop? You're using things like airflow, drum speed, temperature, all these factors. It takes a long time to get good at it. I kind of liken it to if you go to a restaurant, how often is your steak cooked perfectly? Not that often, and all line cooks do
Right.
they cook meat. They don't
Right.
have, so that shows you just the kind of practice necessary. So there really is an art to roasting, and I think going to a place that understands that and practices that art and has thousands and thousands and thousands of hours behind that, it's going to make a difference in your coffee. Now, the caffeine question is interesting because you'll often hear people say the dark roast has less caffeine.
Right.
Technically, that is true because you're cooking off a little bit more water, but it is physically imperceptible, the difference between like these roasts here. So I would not let that be the guiding factor in selecting your coffee. I would choose a coffee that you think is delicious.
But if you're making cold brew, you're going to be getting
Oh,
twice
yes,
as
good
much
point.
caffeine.
Yes, that's a
and-
good point. The brewing method will certainly affect the caffeine. So methods where the coffee is being saturated for a long time, the longer the coffee sits in water, those methods are typically going to have more caffeine. Okay. So French press, even AeroPress, methods where the water is running through the coffee are going to extract slightly less caffeine.
Okay. So, Michael,
Yes.
when we asked you before, what are your coffee habits? Like, you were like, well, we might try one coffee and then we might try a different coffee. What have you found that you really like, and what question can Andrea answer for you to help you make a better coffee choice?
Well, we have our favorites, so we'll bounce back and forth. This way we don't get tired of the same one every day, starting the day out with the same type of coffee. So we'll go through a few, but I have my question is, when I go to a supermarket or somewhere and there's all different, I tend to stick to the same brands. And my question is, what can I do? What do I look at that right away makes me realize that's a good coffee, that's one I should try? I know there's plenty of apps and stuff, and sometimes the region that the grapes were grown for wine. They can guide you on picking a type of wine or a type of grape you like. But with coffee, what are the telltale signs when I'm looking at all those different bags of what I need to be getting?
Well, one reason that single origins have become so popular is that is a very easy way to discern that, okay, this is from a single estate, it's Arabica, it's of a certain quality. So it's not a catch-all, but it's a pretty good indicator, hey, that's a pretty high quality coffee. Often our blends are unique because we're blending hand-picked highest grade Arabica. Often a blend at a supermarket will blend in cheaper coffees. So if you're at a supermarket, a single origin coffee, and especially if it says estate or finca, that is a good indicator that it's probably a hand-picked, high-altitude, good coffee.
It's good to know.
So we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, Andrea's going to make us a pour-over coffee, and Michael's, you're going to try it.
I'm the taste tester. I'm ready for anything.
Hi, my name's Heather. I'm a mother of 2, and I'm also a morning TV reporter. So I get up at 3:30 in the morning, and I love coffee. I started putting Bub's MCT powder in my coffee as a dairy alternative, and I love the flavor, and I love how it makes me feel. Basically, it helps me maintain energy levels throughout the entire morning, and then moving into my day when I go home to my kiddos, it's still helping. It helps with my cognitive alertness so that I can talk well on TV after I've woken up so early in the morning, and it makes me feel good so I don't have the caffeine jitters.
Welcome back to Better Than Gossip. We are here today with Andrea Smith, our coffee expert, and Michael, our coffee tasting expert. And let's just talk real quickly about the different brewing techniques. A lot of, Michael, you said you drink drip coffee
Yep.
most often. I'm an espresso drinker, and there's also other types, correct?
Yes, drip is probably, I would say, the most popular in this country. I actually love drip coffee as well. That's
what
my
we're drinking
favorite
here.
And that, I think a lot of people like it because it makes a very clean cup. It's very crisp. It's got a nice finish. Some people prefer espresso. It's more concentrated. I think of espresso as kind of like the essence of coffee. Essentially, the coffee is ground very, very fine. There isn't such thing as an espresso bean. You could actually use any coffee, grind it fine. You put it in an espresso machine, and it's very, very high steam pressure. It hits the coffee, the steam turns to liquid and comes through and extracts very quickly and like a small concentrated amount. Some people like that. Other methods would be like French press, AeroPress. That's where the coffee is saturated in the water. Add hot water, let it sit. It sits longer, steeping like tea. So that would end up a little bit stronger. Some people enjoy that. And then like the French press, there is like a metal filter. The AeroPress has it's like a type of cloth in the AeroPress.
And what about pods?
I personally am not a fan of the pod. The pods are very convenient, so no judgment if anyone really needs to use a pod for convenience or it's a business decision. Pods, though, terrible for the environment. A lot of packaging for a single cup of coffee. Also, the coffee is not, I don't believe it ages well. It's sitting there for a long time, ground. So just not a fan.
And we did talk about, a great cup of coffee starts with a great bean, properly sourced, properly roasted, properly ground. So for people who really love a great cup of coffee, it's worth doing a little extra work. Finding your small local coffee roaster, experimenting with the beans. And we do want to support small independent businesses as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got something going on here.
Yes.
We've got a pour over, and you're going to show us how to do pour over and talk a little bit about the saturation, which we've mentioned a couple of times.
So this is a pour over. For this demonstration purpose, the coffee is already in this dry filter. If I were at home, what I would do is I would actually saturate that filter with hot water. That's going to do a couple of things. It's going to clear kind of the taste of the filter out. It's also going to warm the brewer to temperature, so it's not going to affect the temperature. So that's what I would do first. Then I would put the coffee in. The water, typically you would heat to about 205 degrees. So a lot of times people will underheat water for coffee or overheat it. They go over boiling, and what that's going to do is over extract from the coffee, or if it's not hot enough, it won't extract enough. So here we have our pot of hot water. Often you will see people use a gooseneck kettle because it's going to really allow for controlled pouring, because in the pour over, you want to be fairly controlled. You want to initially saturate all of the coffee. That is called the bloom. And then the following part of pouring is anytime you see dark, that's where you direct the pour, and that's what that gooseneck will be for. So if you see dark spots, that will be coffee that is not fully saturated. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So we can start here. I will hold this just to be cautious. You see I'm going around. I fill it all the way up and I keep it. So the mistake a lot of people make is they let the water run down. We want to keep a high water level because that is keeping a consistent extraction instead of it running through.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So we will kind of hear it. I'm going to end up lifting it because this is going to brew slightly larger than this cup. I'm not seeing, do you guys see any?
No coffee running over the sides yet.
Yeah. I'm trying to get over here a little bit. Then this is where this would be pushed against here a little better.
And I think if I was doing this, I would definitely think to let it run down. Mm-hmm. And so keeping the
water level high is the real pro tip that people forget about.
Okay.
And then you're going to you'll feel like you're wasting a little coffee, but you're not, because it's just going to be runoff that you don't need. I'm lifting just to see so I don't have an accident here.
Oh, it
We're doing
smells
pretty good.
amazing. It smells so
This
good.
is a nice ceramic pour over. I do prefer to use the unbleached filters that don't have
Okay.
all those chemicals in them. Keep this.
And this is really easy. Anybody
so
could
easy.
do this at home. So if you're looking to brew a perfect cup of coffee, this is like
It's also
pretty simple and quick.
Great when if you're trying to cut back your consumption a little. It's really easy when you have a pot to just keep topping your cup up. And I mean, I'm not talking from experience. So there we go. We're just going to put that there.
Okay.
We're going to allow Michael to taste this
Excellent.
slightly.
Michael's
This
like
is a lighter
all
one.
in. He's
I
like,
am.
okay.
I love coffee, so this is great.
A little.
Oh, that's excellent.
And this is more of a Pinot Noir style.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah, that's
medium roast. It's the Caravan blend, which is one of Misha's house
Yeah.
roasts. And again, it's a secret formula, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite different. I mean, I'm getting like the finish is almost like a little like a fruitiness, a nuttiness to it. It's excellent. Really
Yes.
good.
The lighter roasts are typically they're going to have a slightly less body, but then the finish it's kind of a snappy quality to the finish, that fruitiness.
You may have converted me.
Oh, good.
So the next thing that happens in the show is one of my favorite parts, and it is the secret sauce. And it's where Andrea is going to share an insider tip that most people might not know about coffee.
Well, my secret sauce tip I use daily to blend my love for coffee and wellness together. I believe that most people do not have a high enough protein intake. So getting that extra bit of protein every day can be hard for a lot of people. I choose to do so by putting collagen in my coffee every day. I love Bubs collagen because it is Whole30 approved. And if any of you guys are familiar with the Whole30, it is from grass-fed, grass-finished cows. It is a bovine collagen. Collagen is not a complete protein. It's missing 2 amino acids, but for macronutrient sake, you can count it as protein. So protein and coffee, to me, a winning combination. This is a travel pack of Bubs. This is right here, 10 grams of protein. You simply put it in your coffee and mix it right up. You could add a little bit of any type of creamer if you like, but you don't have to. And then I'm just going to mix it up here.
What a great tip. And I love these little travel packets.
Oh, they're
That's so
wonderful.
handy if you because I think for a lot of people when you're traveling, it can be easy to get off your schedule. And when you're eating out and you're trying to make good choices, it's really important to make sure that you're covering the protein base.
And collagen also, a lot of people don't know, it's very high in glycine. Collagen is incredible for your gut. So if you're having any kind of gut issues, one of the first things that a doctor who specializes in that stuff will tell you is increase your glycine. Collagen is incredible. It's incredible for your nails, your skin, and your hair. And I'm not saying that I'm of an age where I'm concerned about that, but I do love my collagen.
Okay. So Michael,
All right.
time to taste it. Tell me what you think.
There's no difference whatsoever
yeah.
Okay.
in taste. I was expecting
what I love
something.
about it.
something
Okay.
In fact, it went in white, and it's still the
Yep.
same color as coffee.
You could even, it's so tasteless, you can actually put it in anything, in juice or, yeah.
And this is interesting to me because people ask me a lot as a wellness expert. People ask me all the time about collagen, and I haven't really, to be honest, I haven't really found one I love. So I think it's important to talk about why grass-fed, grass-finished makes a difference.
Absolutely, because essentially you are eating whatever that animal has eaten.
Right.
And so if collagen...
Bovine is cow.
Yes, and so collagen this is going to be basically, it's from cows, from bones. And so you want cows that have only been living an amazing life, pastured, like living on the pasture, eating grass, because you do not want to be taking in any chemicals that they're eating.
Hormones,
So, yeah,
chemicals,
hormones, all of those
antibiotics,
things.
all
Yep.
of that.
So this is incredibly sourced. This is also an amazing company. It is owned by a guy who was best friends with a SEAL named Glenn Doherty, who was killed in Benghazi. And so 10% of all of the profits for this company go to a foundation for him.
Yeah. We really love to align our values with our consumer dollars. And just to do a real quick recap, Andrea, why don't you tell us what people need to know? Let's just recap how to make a perfect cup of coffee at home.
Make sure you select beans from a good roaster. Make sure that they're sourced well, roasted well. Make sure that you are getting what you like. That's the first thing. Don't let anyone else tell you what you like. Like, oh, a light roast is cool, and pick whatever you like. Grind it properly with a burr grinder. If you don't have a good grinder, get it ground, and then just select a brewing method again that is to your taste. Once you do that, you can refine that method by adjusting the grind as necessary, making sure the water temperature is hot enough if you are the one heating the water. An espresso machine that would take care of that's regulated, or an automatic drip. You don't determine the temperature, but for the pour over, that would be important. And then drinking it how you like.
How you like it. Anything else, Michael, that
No,
you want to add?
honestly, this has been so educational. Like I've taken it all in. I've learned so much, and you think you know something, especially something you do every day, which is drink coffee. But the tips and tricks that you've just said today have been absolutely phenomenal. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I have to say, I've been drinking a lot of espresso, but I'm really enjoying the brewed coffee, and it does have more nuanced flavors. So I think I might change it up a little bit there. So this has been a delicious Better Than Gossip show. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today and
My
being
pleasure.
our expert taster. Andrea, where can people find out more about Misha's Coffee and how they can get some?
Oh, they can go to mishascoffee.com. Better Than Gossip listeners can get a free half-pound of coffee with any order. You can also read about all of our offerings, and also check out our Instagram at Misha's for Coffee.
I'm Kristen Coffield, and this was Better Than Gossip, Ageless Advice for Timeless Women. We'll see you next time.